Hello, NWI. Welcome to Bluer by the Lake, the podcast that explores region life through a blue lens. I'm your host, Tracy Martin, and joining me today is Scott Miller. Scott
Hey,
currently serves as the Chief of Staff for the City of Hammond and is running for Lake County Council. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
I am very happy to be here. Excited to discuss this opportunity and what it means for our residents. And just thank you for having me on your program. It's great.
You might not be thanking me in a few minutes because, folks, I
Oh
have a
boy.
surprise. I have a surprise. I'm very excited about this. Scott here is the lucky winner to be the very first candidate to appear in my new special segment. I know we all love our forums and we all love our debates and we all love our town halls, and it's great. And I've been to a lot, and I know you have too, Scott. But
True story.
we all heard that talk, so I wanted to get a way for everybody in Lake County to get a more interesting, maybe a less formal look at their Dem candidates. So we're going to
Great.
start with this new segment called Five Questions with Me. How exciting. All right. So, guys, just so you know how this works, these are five questions. I made them up in my little brain here. Scott hasn't seen them, and he's going to get 5 minutes for this. I should have put a timer up to keep us both honest, but I didn't. So,
5 minutes per
anyhow,
question or 5 minutes total for five questions?
no, 5 minutes per question.
Okay. All right. I can live with that.
You can live with that. Okay. And if you go over a little bit, I don't think anybody's gonna cry. We'll
You're not
be
gonna
we'll
buzz.
be
You're
okay
not
with
gonna
that.
buzz me.
Yeah, nobody. Not yet. Although I saw somebody showed me this. I saw this thing on TikTok. Not normally, I'm not a TikTok scroller. I didn't start on TikTok until I started this podcast. And I saw this is totally random, guys, but I saw this thing and I want it so bad. I want it. I don't buy stuff
Oh,
off of TikTok, but I almost wish I did because it was this Law and Order gavel button, and you pushed it and it made the Law and Order sound. And I feel like that's something everybody needs in their life. I understand why that person was hawking it because it was instantly attractive. But anyhow,
well, if you use it
random,
on your podcast, it can be a business expense. There you go.
I should probably try it. I'll try to deduct that whole $8.99.
There you go.
Alrighty, so are you ready, Scott?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yes, already. So, Scott, you have held a lot of really challenging roles in city government, particularly in the city of Hammond. And a lot of those, there's a lot of stuff where you have to make a lot of choices that were difficult. What was the most difficult, unpopular decision you had to make? And you can preface this a little bit with your backstory on, the role that you were working in.
Yeah, that definitely. I know the answer to that right off the bat, but that's definitely having to close schools and lay off people. Uh, but I'll take the school closure and explain that a little bit. I started as an employee in School City of Hammond when I was 20 years old back in 1997. I was in a
Hmm.
variety of roles and was teacher 14 years, became principal and director of the Career Center. And then in 2019, I became superintendent of schools and was in that role for 5 very long years. But what I
Heavy
inherited
is the
when,
head that wears the crown.
yes, yeah, I mean, I got the joy of COVID and declining enrollment and a lot of other things that were challenges. But right off the bat,
Wait,
I
wait,
did
wait,
not get
back
up.
up a minute. You were the superintendent in Hammond schools during COVID?
I absolutely was. Yep. I
Oh
s-
my god. Oh, okay, so, eh,
we could
I
have a whole program just on that if you wanted.
well, another time, but I just want you to know y that I don't know how you survived it. What a horrible, horrible time to be in that kind of leadership role. Thank you for that service. Okay, on you go.
That's very kind of you. But prior to that, I became superintendent. I was announced in March of 2019, official in April. And the task the board gave me, the school board, right off the bat was we're in financial straits. And a lot of people that didn't make sense because just in 2017, the school had won an operating referendum in the city of Hammond, which provided extra funding. But rightfully so, there hadn't been raises in a while, so the school gave out raises to teachers and all the employees, and even gave some retroactive raises to catch people up. Insurance went through the roof around that time, and the big one though was you might be aware that Lake County had a 10-year stay on the tax caps. The Governor Daniels tax caps across the state, the 1, 2, and 3% property tax
Mhm.
caps. Lake County got 10 years, and the taxing units therein got 10 years before they had to adjust to that new reality. And that hit Hammond schools over a $10 million a year loss. And so basically all of the revenue that came in from the operating referendum was wiped out with the tax caps, and they
Wow.
spent more money before I was superintendent to give raises to everyone, and the insurance was through the roof. So I inherited a $1,700 cash balance in the operations fund when I became superintendent. And we hadn't paid our NIPSCO bill for 3 months. So that was 2019, but maybe I can relate to some people on your channel that
Hmm.
NIPSCO is expensive and we don't have enough money to cover expenses. So right off the bat, I had to deal with, schools, 90 cents of every dollar they spend is on people. It's on people, teachers, bus drivers, food service workers, custodians, administrators, everybody. 90 cents on the dollar goes to salary and benefits and all of that. So the only real way to reduce your expenses in the school system is unfortunately to reduce your staff. And when you're in that bad a situation, you can't just do it through attrition and be like, okay, as people naturally leave the organization, we won't fill jobs. We certainly did some of that. But right off the bat, by May, I got hired officially in April. By the end of May, I had announced closing 3 elementary schools and having to lay off 100 people. So honeymoon for me right off the bat. And those are 3 elementary schools, Miller, Columbia, and Lafayette. But then we get this letter, we think, okay, we've done the hard things. But then just fast forward to August, and we get a letter from DUOB, the Distressed Units Appeal Board, who is the group that took over the schools in Gary. And they're like, what you did was great, but it's not enough. And so we had a series of meetings with them, and they're like, basically, your building infrastructure is too big for the number of students you have. Yeah, and here's a tagline from this thing. This is the one that most resonates with people because I've told this story so many times. 50 years prior, in 1969, Hammond schools had 25,000 students, 25,000, and they had Gabbett, Clark, Hammond High, Morton, and Hammond Tech, 5 high schools. Fast forward 50 years, we still have Hammond High, Clark, Morton, Gabbett, and now Hammond Tech is called the Area Career Center. But we still have the 5 same buildings in only 11,500 students.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so it doesn't math. Like it doesn't math. And Governor Daniels shifted the primary funding of schools from property taxes to the state. And if you might remember at the time, the
Oh,
sales
yeah.
tax or the excise tax went from 6% to 7% to help fund schools. But it also changed the formula. It wasn't based on your local property tax, it was based on the number of students. So if your funding is based on the number of students, and you have half as many as you used to when you had all those schools, again, it just doesn't math. So they basically approved the plan and the board approved it on my recommendation. I'm not saying I wasn't part of it, that we had to close at least 2 of the 4 Hammond high schools to right size the operation. And man, if I talk about painful, but that was for the community, for myself, for the board, for the students. It was one of the most painful things ever. And it was a long lead out too. So it was like, we can't just rip this Band-Aid off. We announced it in the fall of 2019, but we couldn't actually consolidate until Hammond Central, the brand new high school, was built, which didn't open until 21, the fall of
Mm.
21. So, and then COVID hits in March of 2020. So we're doing virtual learning and all this at the same time. And it's not like everybody was on the same page during COVID, right? You had
Yeah.
people thinking kids should be in school. You had people thinking the kids should be home. So there's all this angst and we're having to try to consolidate schools. And we had all these activities to bring the students together planned, but then we couldn't get together. I mean, like that we weren't because of COVID, we couldn't bring students together because of the social distancing. But that was kind of the nightmare scenario. And I think what I underestimated, and I will say that this is true, I underestimated it, was the connection that individual communities had in Hammond to their building, like to their school.
Mm.
And to me, where I was probably wrong was I saw it a little bit more as a math problem, like how I described it to you, that there's not enough inputs and outputs. It just doesn't work. But for the community, it was very personal, right? Like, hey, that's the school I graduated from, and my kids went to that school, and my parents went to that school, and you're telling me it's not going to be there anymore. I want my school. And the most common comment I received during that time was, "I know you need to close schools, but don't close mine."
Yeah.
And that and I understand the sentiment, right? Like, hey, like I know what you got to do, but like, don't close Clark or don't close Gavin. And that was, I mean, that's heartbreaking, right? Like, I mean, like, but at the end of the day, how this applies to my candidacy now is I will make the tough decisions if that's what's needed to right size the operation. And there's going to be some things in county government because of Senate Bill 1, which we can maybe talk about later, that are going to require some difficult decisions where not everyone is going to be pleased with the outcome. But
Somebody's
but
got to be the bad guy.
I'm going to be I am battle tested. I mean, there's no I mean just go to the Times website and type in my name. You will see the articles after articles after articles about some of the things that I had to do in Hammond schools. But what I've learned though is that I do have like anybody who's in the public persona, there's some people I will never win over. But I have a lot of people who I did win over, and they appreciated the fact that I comported myself through that. I treated people with respect. I listened to people. I showed up and had conversations. I had a 4-hour meeting at Clark where one after another people came up and just asked me question after question after question, and a 3-hour meeting at Gavitt where I did the same thing. I didn't hide in my office. I came out and I faced the music, and I will continue to do that, whether popular or unpopular. I'm not going to hide in the county building or in my house. I will be out and around, listening and talking to people, and hopefully tweaking the ideas so we get the best possible outcome.
Wow. Well, it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like you've been pretty battle tested for this, for the county council. Well, now that we've talked about something that was difficult, let's talk about something positive. What is your proudest professional moment?
I have quite a few of them, and a lot of them are not very public, but I'll give you one of them right now. We were the first school system that I'm aware of in the entire region, perhaps even the state, where we figured out it went through all the hoops to be able to send home unused food to kids that need it. And that had never been done before. It sounds so simple, right? Like, hey, why don't
Yeah.
you send the leftover food that you're preparing instead of throwing it away? How about you send it home with kids that need it? But when you do something like that, it triggers all these other things like the health department, and that food is paid for by the federal school and lunch programs. You have to persevere through a bunch of different approvals to get to a point where we actually vacuum sealed take home meals for kids. And then we had to go through an identification process. How do we decide which kids get this blessing and which don't? And what if some days we have more food or less food and all of this? But all these are reasons that people who are haters, they will pick one of those things and be like, well, you weren't fair to do that, but then nothing gets done, right? Like if you just listen to the haters, nothing ever gets accomplished. And the reality is maybe it wasn't perfect, but we were able to bless so many families with meals who we knew were experiencing food insecurity, especially during COVID time. We prepared over 1 million meals where people could come pick up and bring meals home. But this was after COVID. I challenged my food service director. I worked with her. We wrote letters and we got it done. And without any fanfare, because we didn't want kids to feel embarrassed. So we didn't promote it out everywhere. But we created a program where kids in every single one of our schools were taking home extra unused, unsold food from that day. And that's one of those things that I am really proud of. If we have time for one more,
You can you can have more. You can have two more if you want.
here's another really cool thing that we were able to do. And one of the things that I prided myself on is that I don't care people's political affiliation. If you have a good idea, and I want to support it. It doesn't matter to me if you're Democrat or Republican. And when I was at the school system, I didn't care if you were the lowest paid employee or you were upper management. If you had a good idea, I wanted I wanted to hear it because sometimes the boots on the ground people are the ones who have the most true telling of what's going on. And often they have the best solutions to what's going on. But in this case, because I've worked on relationships all over the place, the war in Ukraine continues to go on. But one of the coolest things is I was able to bring to Hammond, and it got to bless the region too, was that Governor Holcomb, you might be aware, started bringing in Ukrainian refugees into Indiana. And then because of that connection, he was able to find out that the Ukrainian Olympic wrestling team could no longer safely practice in the Ukraine, and they were looking to come to some other place in the world to be able to safely wrestle. And they kind of put a call out, and I indicated my interest in hosting the men's Olympic Ukrainian wrestling team in Hammond. And wouldn't you know, they said yes. And so we had the men's Ukrainian wrestling team come in. They stayed at the hotel over by the Dynasty in Hammond. And right off the bat, they were so grateful. They're like, "Hey, Scott, anybody you want to bring in here, they can watch our practice. We'll train with them." I'm like, "Are you guys serious?" Like, they're like, "Absolutely." So not only was the high school wrestling team involved, the junior wrestlers, like the kids who were 5, 6, 7 year old, they would practice. I attended, so they would practice with the kids and train with the kids. And we invited schools from across the region to come in and train, and they would even wrestle with the student athletes. Like they would literally, our student athletes had an opportunity to wrestle with an Olympic wrestler. And it was
Yeah.
yeah, and it's one of those things that to me goes across so many different barriers. Most of the guys from the Ukraine didn't even speak English. They didn't speak any English at all. And there was one or two that did, but most of them did not. But through this bond of like sports and just gratitude and respect, I think it was just a great blessing for so many young people to see like, oh, that's what it means to be an Olympic athlete. That's the kind of camaraderie that we can share. And I just think it was just one of those highlights for me. Yeah, as
Oh.
superintendent to be able to bring that opportunity to Hammond. And again, the point is in this context is, hey, I'm if it's a good idea, I want to do it. Like, I mean, that's I think sometimes people think when you're in charge that you own everything. I don't. I'm happy to give credit to whomever if it's a great idea. And that's one of the ones that I was kind of along for the ride. But if my focus was, well, I'm all about academics, then that wouldn't have happened. That opportunity would have not come to Hammond, and those kids wouldn't have seen all of that. But to me, kids need positive impacts like that, and those are things that really make a difference. And I had young people come up and even after they graduated, tell me how much that opportunity meant to them.
Wow, it sounds like you made an impact with that one. So let's move into this is going to be a complete 180.
Okay,
You're a man of very deep faith. Now,
sure.
can you tell us how has you ever had a moment where either your personal convictions or the convictions of the office that you're holding or the requirements of the office that you're holding come in conflict, either with your church's doctrine or with your own personal beliefs? And if so, how did you handle that? How did you resolve those tensions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm struggling to think of anything immediately where I felt that there was a deal of conflict because I've gone through a lot of growing in my faith. I was born and raised in a conservative Baptist, not as conservative as perhaps like Hammond Baptist, but still pretty conservative Baptist upbringing and theology. And over time, I realized that I wanted something that was more reflective of the community that my heart was leaning towards. And so my wife Tracy and I were going to Bethel Church in Crown Point at the time. And they started this program called Mission Them, where the leadership felt compelled, instead of having everyone come to Crown Point, we want to be a presence out where people are. I remember they had all these outward arrows and eventually they came to the community of Gary. And they said, you know what, we really feel like we can be a blessing to the community of Gary. And they started to request for people interested in being part of the launch team. And so my wife and I, we prayed about it, we talked about it, we discussed it, and we really felt compelled that we wanted to be part of the Gary launch team. So we went out to Gary, and it was on Fifth Avenue, um, and on the old Boys and Girls Club, right by the Genesis Center there. And we got the building for a song. Really felt like God was working it out for us to be there. We were there for almost 10 years, and there was a bit of a falling out during that time between the Crown Point campus and Gary. Yeah, and not to get into too much detail because I really love some of the people at Crown Point, but basically, if you try the Crown Point suburban church model in downtown Gary,
No.
it doesn't work well.
Mm-mm-mm-mm. No, that is a it's a different community.
It is, it is, and I think they're because that model worked like out in Cedar Lake and out in Hobart Portage, some of the other campuses that Bethel did, that they felt that that model was reproducible, like a franchise almost, like everywhere. Hey, you just do these things in this location, it works. But I mean, I like Chris Tomlin as much as anybody else, but like singing Chris Tomlin and Gary is just not what they're looking for, or contemporary Christian music.
Yeah.
And so it was really a growing experience for me to find out what were idols of my culture that were still in my heart that I was holding on to that I felt were really important things, like the style of music or some of the other things, and it made me give those things up. I think if I didn't go to Gary, I'd still be holding on to them. Like I would, they would still be important to me.
Mm.
But along that same time, I also got the opportunity to be superintendent of Hammond schools. And what I found was instead of a conflict, I found harmony. Like this is a role where my mission field is twofold. It's not to convert people into Christians, but it's to share the Christian values of love, hope, peace in my day job. So I could be a superintendent who tried to do those things, provide hope to the community in our schools and have our schools be safe places where kids legitimately felt loved. That was the highest dynamic. And so things that come up over the time, like, oh, well, what's your ideology of trans or LGBTQ or any of those things? My answer is it doesn't matter. Like the schools are supposed to be the place where, regardless of who you are, when you come in our door, we're going to treat you with respect, love. We're going to value your identity, and we're going to educate you. But we're not going to make those other things that are divisive in our culture to be divisive here. Like you're going to be safe and accepted. And to me, that's a very democratic value. And one of the reasons I'm running as a Democrat is that we love and accept everybody. Like that's how it should be. Surprisingly, not everybody agrees with that perspective. And I found that there was some vocal pushback on those type of things for simple things like teachers wanting to post in their room that all are accepted here with a rainbow. And I would have parents that would want to push back on those things and say like, well, that's you're brainwashing, that's ideology, it's all this kind of stuff. I said, no, it's acceptance. Like if people don't even feel any of us like this, if we don't even feel welcome in a place, we're not going to receive what they have to offer, whether that's a church or a school or government. If you don't even feel like I'm welcome here, I'm not going to go here. And we're going to expect kids to spend 185 days for 12 years to come in and they don't even feel like who they are as a person is valued. No, like that to me is something that maybe I had conflict with people who didn't see it that way. But for me, that's how a church should be. A church shouldn't be you got to clean up your life and then come here. It should be a place for, hey, none of us have this perfectly figured out. All of us have sin in our lives. None of us are perfect. And because you came here, we welcome you. So for me, I couldn't have been superintendent in Carmel, Indiana. Like it wouldn't have worked. To pick, I don't want to pick on anyone too close. Or Zionsville, Indiana. They would have hated me. Like that's not where I could have had any kind of. I would have been in conflict all the time with the board, with their value system and mine. So for me to my brand of Christianity is leave the judgment aside and show people you care about them first. Let the Holy Spirit do its job to convict. And if you build a relationship, sure, you can talk to people if you think that they're harming themselves with their choices. Yeah, yeah. If somebody jumps in a pool and they're drowning, I'm going to pull them out. But if that makes sense, is like,
It
I'm not
does.
saying that I accept every person's choice in their whole life. Some choices are damaging. And, I have some dear people in my life who have felt the impacts of addiction and things like that. But I found that being in an urban context with my faith and then my employment also being in an urban context to be a great harmony.
That is absolutely fascinating. It sounds like you've really learned how to understand the different facets of your community, and it also sounds like God probably put that opportunity right there for you to grow from it.
If it's not something that maybe we go into, but if we have a little time, I would love to tell how God put me in that role as superintendent. It just doesn't happen. Like, I mean, there's no way I can give credit to anybody but him on how I became superintendent.
Go for it.
Okay. So I've never told this story publicly before, but a lot of people who know me well have heard this story. But essentially, the school city Hammond, Dr. Watkins had been trying to retire for a while. He had been there, I believe, 14 years as superintendent, and he had let the board know that I want to enjoy some retirement. So before I became superintendent, the school board went through not one, not two, but three failed nationwide superintendent
Oh
searches.
boy.
Three. Two by the same board, and then there was an election, and then the new board said, we're going to try again. And they also could not get three votes for any one candidate. So there were some finalists in each of the three rounds, but it's a 5-person board, so you need at least three people to say that's our person. And there's a lot of good people that would have absolutely done a good job, but because of board politics and everything else, they could not. They could. And at that time, I was the director of the Career Center. It's the old Hammond Tech building, and that's a career technical, or the old school term is vocational school for kids from all the way down to Lake Central, all the way up to Whiting, and everybody in between as far east as Lake Station. They get bussed in for a half day and they're there
Oh,
for two
okay.
and a half hours. And they learn a skill like welding, nursing, culinary arts, IT, uh, auto mechanics. And we had 16 different career programs. And I was doing really well there. I love that school. It's an amazing school. And I was doing well. After the third one, a couple people who were part of the management of School City Hammond, they came to me privately, separately even, and they're like, "Hey, you know, the board still hasn't found anyone. We really think you should put your name in." And I'm like, I'm not ready yet. Like, I haven't gone back and got my PhD yet. You know, I understand what the school system needs, but I'm 41. Like, I saw my career trajectory of being like director of the career center and then maybe like an assistant superintendent or like some position like that. But they're like, no, they don't have anybody. Like, you are the best one that we have. So I went home, talked to my wife, and prayed about it over the weekend. That was on a Friday. She said, well, what do you got to lose? I mean, like, what do you got to lose? So I said, okay. So I cold called the board president on the Monday, and we knew of each other, didn't know each other well. And she's like, you know what? Let me talk to the other board members at the school board meeting tomorrow, and I'll let you know. So I always attended the board meetings. After the board meeting, she goes, we're going to interview you on Friday after work, like Friday at 5 o'clock. And so I busted my butt and I put together a portfolio. I actually wrote a like 15-page plan of how to improve Hammond schools. So I walk into the interview and I tell them, I said, hey, I know you guys have your prepared questions, but I've written a plan to improve Hammond schools. And if you like it, if you don't like it, if you really don't like it, I'm not your candidate. But if you like it, it can be a starting point for this conversation. So they said, okay, you go ahead and present your plan. So I present the plan, and like I said, I have it all typed out in like 7 or 8 different domains of areas of improvement, that things that we need to do in Hammond schools to improve it. And all 5 trustees, including the one who ultimately wouldn't vote for me, but all 5 of them engaged with me, had conversation with me, and it was incredibly positive, so much so that they didn't ask me even one question at the end. I mean, after the dialogue with my plan, we dialogued for like 2 hours about the plan. And they're like, Scott, like, you exceeded our expectations. Can you go sit outside in the waiting room for a second? We need to discuss. and they brought me back in 20 minutes later and they offered me the position on the spot.
Well, hot diggity. Oh,
Like that never happens. That
no.
never happens. And I say it's all God's timing. I give him the glory. I did try to prepare in every way I could. I had my credit report. I had my criminal history. I like everything on there so they knew that I was a quality human being. But that's how it happened. That's how I knew also that it was something that God wanted me to do. And it surely was a test of faith over the years, especially when we lost the referendum in 24. That was a
Well,
very
you guys weren't
difficult.
alone in that. People, I think, were weary of referendums.
Yes. And yeah, but since we had won one though, it meant that that $15 million had to go away. And we had to then, of course, lay off a bunch more people and close more schools. But but I give that opportunity. I thank you for bringing up my faith because I really feel like even this opportunity, I had prayed and told my wife because people ask me like, how long are you gonna be chief of staff and all this? Like, what's your plan? Are you going back to education? All that. I love working for Mayor Tom. He's great. I
He's
don't
an
have any
awesome
plans to
guy.
go away. And he's so passionate about stuff. And I think sometimes people misconstrue that passion, but it's really because in his heart, he really wants to see Hammond improve. I told my wife, I said, I'm just going to keep doing the best job I can. And if opportunity comes, it will come. And for the county council position, the incumbent Dave Ham went to mayor and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about retiring. I don't want to do this anymore." And they had a conversation, and basically my name got brought up, and they both loved it. And then they came to me and asked me about it. So I didn't seek this out. It wasn't something like I coveted to be the next Lake County councilman. It was because they both saw the caliber of work and the kind of human I was, and they came to me and said, we want you to consider this. And so that's how this came about. But I attributed that again to, and God may humble me. I do have an opponent in the primary, and she's a lovely young lady. I will never say a bad word about her. We're not the same candidate. She's never been in the public light like I have and had that experience. But but she's great. And if she would win, I'm still gonna wake up the next day. I might lick my wounds a little bit, but I know my identity, and it's not as chief of staff or superintendent or county counselor. It's as a follower of God in Christ. So like that's who I am as a person. Yeah, and that won't change win or lose.
Wow, this really went into some fascinating directions. I want to you've mentioned your wife a lot. So, let's close up with something, well, actually I have two more questions. So, this one's a
Sure.
little lighter. If your wife, it sounds like she's been by your side for a long time, so she probably knows you very, very, very well. If she could change one thing about you, what would that be?
Um, I think she would probably say in all seriousness, she would probably wish that and I'm probably not the only husband in this scenario, that I would be more cognizant of home calendar and responsibilities. There are times because of my work schedule that I forget about certain events with home and family parties and things like that. And she will be like, I've only told you 3 or 4
Like
times
15.
about this event. Um, I would say that's probably something there that she wishes. And I will say that I have tried to conscientiously improve on that and being present. Like, all of us have one of these, and these can rule our life if we let it. And so
Oh,
making sure that, like, if we're on a date or we're doing things, that I'm not sitting on the phone, that I'm actually investing in the relationship because
which is hard to do when you're in the kind of responsibility, but because when you're a chief of staff,
yeah,
the job does not go away when you go home.
nor on vacation or anytime or
No,
24/7. Sometimes things
no.
happen overnight, and that's part of the job, and I embrace that part of it. I give everyone my phone number who wants it, and um, I'm fine with people contacting me, but it does mean there are times where um, I need to unplug for that and realize no job's forever. I won't be chief of staff forever. I'm not gonna be in this role forever. But hopefully, my marriage, if we both have good health, that's something that after I'm done working, that I've invested enough in it that we have a great
retirement together and enjoy that part of life too.
So, Scott, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I hope that you had fun. Now, here's my last question for you. Tell us what makes you the right pick for this seat.
So I think the reason I would like Hammond, Munster, and Highland voters to pull the lever on Scott Miller is that you're going to have somebody who has put in the work and the time and is ready for this opportunity. We won't agree on every decision on every single social issue, but what people do know about me is that I put in the time and I research it. If you've seen it in my Facebook posts, before I write something, I'm going to research it. And I'm a data person as well. So if a group is going to come and say, "Hey, county council, you need to do this or that," I'm going to say, "Show us the data. Show us that that is the best use of our limited resources." Through Senate Bill 1, and maybe it's needed, it's going to downsize to a point county government. And so we're going to have to be able to look and see, how is every dollar being spent? And I'm going to make people prove to me that dollars are being spent with data. And what do I mean by that? Let me just be real clear that if you're going to say, "Hey, we need to invest in housing," right? Like, this is something that is getting a lot more attention nationwide, is that there's a housing gap, that young people especially aren't having access to housing because the costs have just gone through the roof. Well, if you're going to tell me that, I want to see some sort of metric or calculator that says, okay, per dollar that the county puts in, this will provide the most units or the best quality units. It's not going to just be because I feel it or we have a relationship with this person or this is where it needs to go. It's going to be asking those tough questions and making developers and other people and special interest groups prove to us that that is the best use of our limited funds. And that's what you're going to get with me. You should also expect I'm going to work right alongside the other six counselors, Democrat or Republican, to make the best decisions possible. Now, truthfully, county council is not where you see big social issues legislated. That's more state and federal, but it is, the expectation should be from anyone voting for me, is that you're going to make sure that every dollar you have is spent well. And when things come up that there's a red flag, that we're going to investigate it, be transparent. And what transparent means to me, that we're going to let the community know what the facts are of a situation, even if they're embarrassing. So lawyers don't love that, but I feel like that's the right way to behave as a large organization. When something comes up where money wasn't spent appropriately or someone took this or that, the best thing to do is just come out and say it. People appreciate it. They'll forgive you if you're honest. They don't forgive you if you try to hide it. And so those are
And
things I've
or do they
learned.
trust you?
Yeah, those are things I've learned over my experience, is that your initial like reaction is, "Oh, we don't want to let everybody know about this." But that's wrong. If you talk to experts in public relations, the best thing to do is
Mhm.
just come out and be honest about it. And that's where I'm at in my personal life, and that's how I'll conduct myself professionally. There will be no worries about my behavior or my ethics or anything like that too. You're going to have a quality person to replace the quality work that Dave Ham did for 14 years.
This has been just such the most interesting conversation I've had with a candidate yet. So thank you so much, Scott, for joining
Well,
us today. Can you tell the good people of NWI how they can find out more about you?
sure. You can go to find me on Facebook, Committee to Elect Scott Miller, or you can go to electscottmiller.com. And you find my positions on a lot of different things. If you scroll through some of my Facebook stuff, you'll see a lot there. Shoot me a friend request on my personal page too. You can see a lot of stuff I've written over the past several years on a wide variety of issues. So I appreciate your consideration.
All right, folks, you heard the man. I'll have links to all of those resources posted on the show notes here. So, again, thank you, Scott, for joining us. And, folks, it is so beautiful outside. If I wasn't
Yeah.
having such a nice time talking to Scott here, I would have probably tried to sneak up to the lake. But since I can't, you're going to have to go for me. Enjoy these sunny days as spring is here, and see you later. Bye.